I'm Clint Grover with Never Done Industries, and today I'm going to teach you how to accelerate from a stop on winter roads. I didn't have anybody around to teach me about cars when I was growing up, so I've had to spend the better part of the last 30 years learning on my own the hard way. Now, I'm here to teach you everything I've learned along the way. These are lessons from a car guy. Alright, so in any winter driving scenario, there are a few things that you need to know to be able to operate your vehicle safely. One of the things you need to know is the drive type of the vehicle. You also need to know the temperature that it is outside, right? The ambient temperature. You also need to know what type of tires you have on your vehicle. And finally, you need to know the composition of the surface that you're driving on. What's on the road, right? And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get into the drive type. For those of you who don't know this, I know a lot of you already will, but the drive type refers to which wheels have power when you hit the accelerator, okay? And so if it's a front wheel drive vehicle, then that means that when you hit the throttle, that the front wheels get the power, right? In a rear wheel drive, the back wheels get the power. And in an all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, all four get power. And the four-wheel drive and the all-wheel drive are a little bit different, but we're not going to get into all the specifics of that. All you need to know for this is which wheels are going to spin when you hit the throttle, because that's going to really change the dynamic when you're on a slippery surface like ice or in deep snow or heavy slush or something like that. Now, the second thing that you're going to need to know is what is the temperature and what has the temperature been recently. Also, maybe what the temperature's going to be doing, right? First of all, at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, water freezes. Okay, everybody knows that. When you have a road surface that has water on it, it starts getting to 32 degrees or below that, you're going to start forming ice. Okay, when you start forming ice, it's going to totally change how your vehicle handles on that road surface, right? Now, ice isn't ice all the way across the board, okay? There's different types of ice. Certain ices aren't really that bad to drive on, and some of them are really, really, really dangerous, like black ice, okay? And so it's very important that you know the temperature. Now, if, let's say that it has been -5 all night, okay, and you know that there's ice on the road, well then you wake up, you get moving in the morning, and let's say it's 40 degrees and the road's a little bit wet. That ice that's underneath that melted layer is going to be really, 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 really slippery, okay? And that's very important information for you to have. Now, let's say that it didn't warm up, okay? It was just cold the whole time. Well, it's going to be different because the ice isn't going to be wet. It's not going to have a layer of water on top of the ice, making it super slippery. And so that's going to be able to improve your traction. Ultimately, it's still on ice, but that'll improve your traction to not have wet ice. And so knowing the temperature is very important. If you don't have a little temperature thing inside of your vehicle, a lot of them have, in a dash somewhere, it'll tell you what temperature is outside. You can check your phone, on an app, something like that. If you don't have access to any of that stuff, when you're walking out to your vehicle, drag your feet a little bit. Let's see if it's slippery, see if we've got a lot of ice. And if you can see your breath, it's probably cold enough that there's going to be some ice. For the other two categories, tire type and road surface composition, we're going to head over to the whiteboard. Alright, so what type of tire that you have is going to be very, very important, and it's going to really dictate how your vehicle handles on snow and ice. There's a whole bunch of different types of tires, but I'll show you some of the different types here, okay? So there's one type of tire, this is looking at the front of the tire, that's going to be like a street tire, okay? So a street tire is just going to have just some basic treads like this, okay? The treads are not very deep, and they're not really going to do a good job of getting rid of like snow. They're going to pack with snow very easily just because the treads aren't very deep. And they're also not going to do really, really well on ice because they are a different compound. They're not really soft, and they don't have what's called siping, which I'll talk about here in a minute, okay? So you've got a street tire right here, okay? That's what your vehicle came with. That's what most people are going to have on their vehicle when they're driving in the summer, spring, everything, okay? The second type of tire that you can have is going to be an all-terrain tire. Okay, now an all-terrain tire is going to be similar to a street tire, but it's going to have different types of tread that are a little bit more aggressive. They're also called an all-season tire. Okay, it's going to have different types of tread like this that are built specifically for handling harsher terrains. Okay, and so like when you go into the deeper snow, it's not going to stay packed in there. It's going to come out because the lugs are a little bit wider. Okay, the little grooves in the tire, they're a little bit wider, and so it's going to expel you know, snow and water and stuff a little bit better than a normal street tire would. And then on top of that, they also have these little squiggly lines on the tread on most of them. And what those are is those are called sipes. Okay, it's siping. A tire is siped when it has these little things. What those do is think of it like fingers. Okay, so if you have just a solid chunk of rubber that's trying to grab the road, it's going to do that, right? Like it can slip, especially if it's on ice. Now if you have these sipes, then think of them like fingers because the rubber is kind of fingered out. Well, then it's got all that trying to grab for traction. It's going to get a lot better traction than a normal street tire. Okay, and so these are an all-terrain tire. These are what you typically will see like on an SUV or on a pickup or something like that. Okay, well then you move into something like this that's going to be like a mud tire. Okay, and these ones are going to have the great big lugs on them like what we have on the Super Duty, on the Never Done Super Duty. You can see that on our website, neverdoneusa.com. Okay, now these have great big spaces between the tires. Okay, so these are very, very good at going through deep snow because as that snow gets in there, it's really hard to pack it in these giant lugs. And as that tire spins, it throws snow out really well. So for deep snow, for mud, for gravel, rock, all that kind of stuff, the mud tire is going to be very, very good. However, the compound that the mud tires are made out of is typically pretty hard. And because these are great big lugs, instead of a tire with grooves in it or a tire with, you know, kind of medium-sized lugs and siping, these things are terrible on ice. Okay, because the example I was giving before where it's going like this, every one of those lugs is just going to slip like crazy on ice. So in deep snow, a mud tire is okay, but on ice, you definitely do not want it. The example that I was given before about the vehicle slipping out on you, the mud tires are going to be terrible for that. Also, when you're just driving down the road, it's very easy for your vehicle to get unsettled while you're driving down the road with a mud tire. And the final type of tire is going to be a snow tire. Now the snow tire is going to be similar to your all-terrain tire, okay, except it's going to have a whole bunch of siping on each of the lugs. Okay, it's still going to have a fairly open lug pattern, but you're going to have, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 of these little squiggly lines, these little grooves, and think of each of those, just think of them as fingers. They're opening that rubber up into a finger so that the fingers can grab that slippery surface. Well, then on top of that, some snow tires are what's called studded. Okay, and what those are is, think of them like little spikes in the tires. Okay, and they're from the side profile, they're just about like that, except they're not quite pointed like that. Okay, and so if you've got all these little sipes, all these little fingers, and you've got the studs, the little spikes, right? It's going to do very, very, very well on snow and ice. It's going to do well on the snow because it's got, you know, a medium-sized lug to be able to grab and dig into the snow, and then also expel it so that the tire doesn't just get packed with snow. But then it's also got the little spikes, and those little spikes dig down into the ice really, really well. And so a snow tire is going to be by far, in fact, I'm going to put a studded snow tire. You can get them studded or non-studded, and some tires you can actually have studded. If you look at the tire and it's got little holes in it all over the place, like little spots that are pre-drilled for it, then you can actually have studs put in. But anyway, this is going to be the absolute best tire that you can get for a winter driving scenario. And so if you're going to go somewhere like way up in the mountains where you know it's going to be gnarly, you're not going to have super deep snow because your vehicle is going to be limited by the ride height. But you're going to, like if you're going to be driving around town, driving up over a mountain pass, something like that, the studded snow tire is going to be a million times better. However, there is a caveat to that, and that is these cannot be run year-round. Okay, whoops, I misspelled that. These cannot be run year-round, okay, because the studs tear up the pavement. And so there are limits. You'll have to look into your local laws and see what the limits are in your area. But basically, late fall, early spring is the time that you're allowed to run them, and then you're going to have to switch back to a different tire. Most people are going to find the best value right here in an all-terrain or an all-season tire, because you can drive it on anything and it's not going to cause you any problems no matter what type of surface you encounter. For the most part, it's not going to be as good at specific things. Like this tire is going to ride really well and it's going to handle really well in dry conditions. This tire is going to tear up the mud and the snow and stuff, and this tire is going to be just incredible for snow and ice and everything. But this one is kind of the place where you want to go to just get it all done with one type of tire. All right, so finally we're going to talk about road composition, or the composition of the surface that you're going to be driving on, or that you're going to be accelerating from a stop on more specifically. Okay, so let's say that you have normal road, right, dry road, you stop, you start, everything's fine. Okay, now if let's say that we put snow on that road, okay? That's snow. You put snow on the road, but it's fresh fallen snow and the road was otherwise dry before that, okay? You're still gonna be able to have almost the same traction with a little bit of snow on the road as you did with the dry. And the reason for that is because as you drive over that snow, it's just gonna kind of blow out of the way, okay? Now, when that changes is when the sun comes out and it starts to melt that snow, okay? And so now we're going to look at it from a side view. So here's your pavement, okay? And then you've got your snow layer on top of that, right? Well, as that starts to melt, then you're going to have on the very top, it's going to be wet because it melted, and it's going to start turning into slush, okay? When you're trying to start from a stop on slush, then what's going to happen, if this is your little vehicle here, your tires are going to get packed. The tread on your tire is going to get packed with that slush, and it's going to make it very difficult for you to find traction to get started, okay? And so you're going to want to ease into it. Just like I said before, you're just going to want to ease into it on that. Now let's say that instead of snow and slush, let's say that it was just straight ice, okay? In that scenario, you're going to run into your vehicle either just the tires just spinning when you're trying to start, or the vehicle trying to walk one way or the other because it's on ice, it's, you know, it's shiny, it's polished and stuff. And so you need to know whether you have ice on the road. Now you can look down at the road, you can see it with your, if you've got your headlights on, like if it's, you know, dark outside, you can usually see it shining. Otherwise, look for a reflection from the sun. Just look for a shiny spot, like if this is your stop sign right here, you know, just look right here and see if it's shiny. If it's shiny, then it's going to be icy, and you're going to need to be really, really easy on your throttle as you accelerate out. And so, you know, essentially what you need to do is you just need to look, okay? When you walk out to your vehicle, if you're leaving your house or whatever, you just need to look down at the surface you're going to be driving on and see, is there ice, is there snow, is there slush, and then kind of adjust accordingly. If there's slush, it's going to pack your tires. If there's ice, your tires are going to slide. They're not going to want to find traction. If it's just snow on top of pavement, it's going to be fine. It's going to go and stop at about 75% of what it normally would on dry condition. Okay, so now that we're familiar with our vehicle and we're familiar with the conditions that we're going to be driving on, it's time to move into how to get moving from a stop, right? Whether you're at a stop sign, stop light, pulling out of your driveway, whatever, on snow or icy conditions, okay? Now, the very first thing that you're going to want to know, and the most important thing here, is that you want to ease into your throttle. Do not hammer the throttle because your tires are going to spin, okay? If your tires start to spin, then there's a few different things that can happen, okay? There's a few different outcomes, right? In fact, there's a few different outcomes that are going to happen when you're accelerating from a stop in general. Number one, and the best scenario, is that your vehicle, you know, just accelerates smoothly and perfectly from the stop. And in that case, you know, yahoo, we made it from the stop. You know, we're now accelerating safely on the road. But let's say that doesn't happen, okay? Because what happens oftentimes is anywhere that vehicles stop and start in the winter where there's snow or ice or anything like that, most people will spin their tires, okay? And if there's ice on the ground and you spin your tires, it polishes that ice and it makes it really, really slippery. And then when the sun comes out, maybe it starts to melt it a little bit and it gets into that, you know, that wet, super, super slippery ice that I was talking about earlier, okay? And so what do, right? Well, let's say that the tail end of your vehicle slips out, okay? So you're at the stoplight, you start to accelerate, and the tail end of your vehicle starts to slide out, okay? Now that's going to happen in a rear-wheel drive vehicle more so than it's going to happen in like an all-wheel drive or anything like that. Front-wheel drive, it probably isn't going to happen unless you're sitting on a hill, okay? So the rear end of your vehicle starts to slip out. Well, what do? Let off the throttle, okay? Very first thing you want to do is let off the throttle, because the reason it's slipping is because the tires are spinning, they're not grabbing any traction, and so the vehicle is going to slide, okay? And it's not pushing the vehicle forward, it's just spinning. First thing you want to do, let off the throttle and then ease into it. In fact, sometimes you don't even have to hit the accelerator. Sometimes you can just let it idle and it'll start to go, and then you just come on really, really, really slow, and sometimes it'll do it again, let off again, straighten it out, and you'll be on your way, okay? Just very, very, very soft on the throttle. You might have to come on and off of it a couple times, like I said, but that's how you handle that when the rear of your vehicle starts to slip out, okay? Let's say that your tires just spin and you don't go anywhere, okay? That can happen with any drive type, front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, or all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive, okay? It's not as common in the all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive because you got four wheels spinning, right? So there's a lot more opportunity for traction. But if you're trying to accelerate and the vehicle just doesn't go anywhere and you can hear the tires bzzz, spinning, right? You've just given it too much throttle and you're on a very polished surface, okay? Don't give it more throttle. All you're going to do is make it worse, okay? When your tires are spinning, your vehicle gets very unstable, all right? Like think of it like an air hockey table, okay? That's essentially what your vehicle's doing. It's kind of just floating on that ice. Let off of the throttle, come back on it really easy, okay? If it continues to do it, then get on it, come off of it, get on it, come off of it, get on it, come off of it. And don't get on it really hard at any point in there, okay? It will find traction as it kind of walks its way through. It will find traction and you'll be able to accelerate out of there safely. If you're on it really hard and you're spinning, you're thinking, oh, I'm gonna burn down through the ice and I'll find traction down there at the bottom. Eventually you will, but what the problem with that is let's say that the rest of the intersection or the rest of whatever you're driving out onto is also icy. Well, now you're at full throttle, you finally hooked up, okay, you're going to probably end up crashing because your vehicle's not going to want to stop either on the ice. Okay, so very, very, very easy starting. Again, come on and off, that kind of stuff, and you'll be able to get going that way. Okay, now let's say that the front of your vehicle starts to slip, okay? And so you're at the stop, you start to accelerate, and you notice the front of your vehicle sliding to the side like that. Typically it goes to the right when it does this. Now this happens in front wheel drive vehicles. Why is that? Well, because the front tires are the ones that are spinning, okay? So once the front tires start spinning, it starts doing that air hockey table type thing where it starts kind of floating, okay? What you're gonna do is you're going to, let's say it kind of slides that way, you're gonna turn back the way that you're wanting to go, you're gonna let off, you're gonna come on really, really easy, and eventually it'll grab and you'll be able to take off. If you throttle it hard, it's gonna go all the way and you're gonna end up having to back up and it's gonna be a mess. Turn the wheel slightly the way you wanna go. Come on, come off, come on, come off. Just really, really super light, okay? Like 1/10 throttle, maybe even less than that, and you'll be able to find traction. Finally, let's say that the whole vehicle, so you hit the throttle and the whole thing starts to go sideways, okay? Now that typically only happens in an all-wheel drive or a four-wheel drive vehicle, and most often it doesn't happen on a flat surface. It happens if the road is slightly curved, right? And so your tires start to spin because you've given it too much throttle, and so the vehicle starts to slide down. Again, let off the throttle. In an all-wheel drive vehicle, when you let off the throttle and the power is taken away from these wheels, oftentimes it'll start to grab and it'll push you forward up into where you can find traction and you can come back on easy. If it doesn't, then exactly the same thing. Come on really light, come off, come on really light, come off, come on really light, and you'll be able to find the traction that you need. The trick to all of them is you want the minimum amount of power going to the tires as humanly possible while still actually rotating the tire, okay? You want the tire to turn very, very, very slow so that it's not slipping on the ice, okay? And that's the case with any ice or really mud, snow, all kinds of stuff. Anytime you're trying to find traction, you want the tire to turn as slow as it can turn so that it can actually grab a hold of the surface that it's on. All right, now that you know everything there is to know about accelerating on ice and snowy roads, take a look at some of our other videos to learn how to stop, how to handle spin-outs, and all sorts of other useful automotive and winter driving knowledge. And if you're a gearhead like me, take a look at our website, NeverDoneUSA.com, for exclusive Never Done clothing and merchandise. Thank you very much for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.